We're back with another episode of a conversation about COVID with our panel, YPG Commander Colonel Ross Poppenberger, Command Sergeant Major Jamathon Nelson, Technical Director Larry Bracamonte, and Deputy Garrison Manager Ron James. Colonel Poppenberger, do you have any opening remarks?
What I will say is we're getting through May here. Things are getting better across the board. As we look across our nation, things are starting to open up. That brings both some positives and some negatives that we'll kind of talk about here today as we go forward. A couple things as it relates to the state. So as of Friday night, tomorrow night, the state's going to lift its stay-at-home order. So things are starting to open up here across the state. In last week's Governor Ducey's address last week, he said, although the total number of cases are still growing in Arizona due to more additional testing, the percentages are going down. So the numbers are trending in the right direction. Governor Ducey said across the state, he mentioned that we peaked in late April, early May. Here in Yuma, yeah, perhaps our numbers again are trending upward, but that's tied into additional testing. What the metric that we're looking at or talking about here as we're comparing things is Yuma hospitalization rates, which are decreasing, which is a good news story. Even though some of our numbers are increasing in the Yuma community, and that's mostly attributed to more testing. But again, we look at percentages of positives seem to be decreasing on some rough numbers that we're looking at here. Again, I just want to reiterate here on Yuma Proving Ground, which is my lane and which I really focus on, is we're still at 0. So, our line just remains flat down at the bottom, which is a great number, and it's because all the great work you all are doing. So we're doing the right things. Our practices, processes, and procedures are working. We never did shut down. We're continuing to work, and our mission is continuing to grow. We're going to get busier and busier as we go forward here. And with that comes a little bit of concern. We're going to be bringing some visitors in the coming weeks. But I want to reiterate to the workforce that what we've done is with the safety team and all the leaders that are going to be handling those visitors, we've layered on some safety precautions to both protect the workforce and them as they come out. So specifically, all incoming visitors will be wearing a mask for 14 days, and we'll be monitoring to make sure that they don't come with any symptoms. Daily monitoring and masks. Once that individual, if they're going to be here for more than 14 days, shows no signs, symptoms for 14 days, then they can remove the mask and when they're when they're working within 6 feet. So bottom line, things are moving in the right direction. And as I always say, as I get around the different ranges, just amazed at the work we do and what we have continued to do in light of this national pandemic that's been going on some significant times in our nation's history. So, I applaud the efforts. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark with some questions here.
Colonel Poppenberger, the models being used by the Yuma County Health Department suggests that Yuma County won't reach peak COVID infection rates until late May or the first week in June. How does that impact our plans going forward?
Well, so again, as I said in my opening comments, looking across the state, the numbers are getting better. Obviously, in our little bubble down here, yeah, if that's what they're saying, and I think our numbers are growing as a result of more testing coming online. But as we talked about in preparation for this, the number of hospitalizations are drastically decreasing, and so numbers are generally going in the right direction. What I will say is last week we talked about how we're going to open back up, and we had some plans here to get some things going. I said last week that by this week I wanted to have the gym open and some other things. Well, over the last weekend, I got some guidance from Department of the Army, and it relates our health protection conditions, HPCON. We're currently in Army-mandated HPCON Charlie across all installations in the Army. Up until this past weekend, there wasn't a lot of definition applied to those different HPCONs. Well, we got some guidance that is causing us to hold back on opening up some of the facilities on post that we had previously opened. So I won't bore everybody with the details, but it's an extensive list on specifics on what we can and can't do. Specifically, we cannot open a lot of our facilities until we're at HPCon Bravo. We're currently at HPCon Charlie. So as I said, I wanted to get our restaurants open last week. Well, we will start opening those facilities when the Army dictates that we can go down to HPCon Bravo. Now, I've made a recommendation to our senior leaders that I see here in the Yuma area. We're ready to withdraw. However, it's going to be a thorough Army discussion on how we do that. And so in the meantime, we will maintain HPCon Charlie until we get guidance from higher headquarters. However, once we do go to HPCon Bravo, that's when we'll start opening up the gym for everybody. Currently, it's only open for soldiers for limited hours. All of our dining facilities are takeout only. Once we go to Bravo, we'll do some sort of dine-in facilities. And so as we loosen from Charlie to Bravo to Alpha to normal, we will open more and more things up. And that's going to be kind of regardless of what the community is doing, because out in Yuma right now, they're going to be opening up restaurants and whatnot. We will still not open some of those facilities up until our senior leaders give us the go-ahead on reducing our HPCon.
Mr. Bracamonte, if a shop downrange had an employee who tested positive for COVID-19, how would that affect that shop's operations?
Mark, it could potentially be devastating if the whole shop had to shut down. There could be certain missions that we may not be able to perform as a result. However, let's focus on the positive here. YPG employees have been doing an excellent job keeping everybody safe. The social distancing, the wearing of masks and so forth go a long way in that we've been open for business. We have not had any positive cases, which is a good thing, but it's the employees that are making this happen. So, my continued advice to the employees is to keep doing what you're doing. In the event that we do have a COVID, somebody tests positive for COVID in the shop, what we would do is we would contact the Yuma County Trace Team. They'd come in, do an assessment, figure out who the person came into contact with. Those persons would be given a COVID-19 test, and they would be told to self-isolate for a couple of days, pending the results of that test. Now, if the tests come back negative and the person is not having any symptoms, they'd be allowed to return back to work. And also, we would also go in and sanitize the person's workspace to ensure that obviously everything is clean before we allow other members of the workforce to work in that area.
Mr. James, when the dine-in option resumes at YPG's restaurants, what's that going to look like? And what about the CDC and Child Care Center?
While we've been in HPCon Charlie and not able to provide the services that we normally provide, we've been busy behind the scenes kind of adjusting things. So when you're able to go to the gym, for example, you'll see the basketball court is now the cardio center because we can separate those machines and give everybody the social distancing space to exercise safely. Going to dining in, so I'll use the Cactus as an example. When you walk in, there'll be a sanitization station. You won't be able to sit together. It'll be separated, so you won't even have the option. There won't even be chairs available. So there'll be dine-in, of course, but it'll be separated. So we won't have high-touch items at the tables. So we're doing everything we can to keep not only the employees but our customers safe. As far as the CDC goes, new procedures there, 10 people to a room is the new rule. That includes the care provider. So we have 9 children and a care provider per room. That reduced our numbers. So to get back to our old numbers so that we can continue to provide the care that we provided in the past, we've reduced our teen numbers and increased our small children, so that way it won't be such an impact on the mission. So parents will show up, a CDC worker will come out to the car, do a health screening, take the children into the CDC, they'll go into their 10-person room, and that's how we'll continue to practice safe distancing in the CDC. Like I said, we're gonna open and it's going to be different. And as I said in the last video, we just ask for everybody's patience, and we also ask for your input. We did get some good input this week, an idea for barriers in our tables in the rock garden, for example. And so we'll certainly look at that, and we appreciate everybody's suggestions as we go forward.
Sergeant Major Nelson, in the earliest days of this crisis, YPG's Airborne Task Force soldiers went above and beyond stitching cloth masks for members of the workforce. Why weren't these masks given to family members as well?
So I saw that question coming in the earliest days when they started making masks. But you have to remember, they didn't start making masks right away. We were directed to use face coverings, T-shirts. There were many videos on that, and that's what we went with. Even in the community, we got hung up on the word masks later on. In the beginning, it was just face coverings. So when the ATF soldiers started making masks, they're making masks with, appropriated funds, government material, and there's legal issues with just handing that stuff out. So, it went to government employees to meet mission requirements, and it didn't only go for YPG. So they made masks for Aberdeen, they made masks for the electronic proving ground. We were sending those masks out to a certain extent, and then we kept some on hand. I also want to highlight the community stepped up, and there were people making masks in the travel camp, at the library, and within their homes. I mean, I personally had, people just hand me masks and bring me masks. I probably have 5 different masks that I can't wear in uniform. So the masks that we were making were for those working in uniform because DOD had certain guidelines on it had to be a tactical color. Mr. James, in his house, his wife made over 40 masks, for the community. But in the beginning, it was just face coverings. So you have to be careful using government materials, government funds, government workers, and handing that out to, the civilian population. It's just legally we can't do that.
When will YPG's health condition go to Bravo from Charlie?
Yeah, that's a question we ask ourselves every day. So, like the Colonel said earlier, the Army over the weekend, it was quite a while ago, suddenly went from, Bravo, everybody at Charlie. It was a blanket order. Well, that blanket order is still in place. But if you're reading the fragos and you're reading the messages coming out, I believe they're starting to look at how do we reduce this so it's not a one-size-fits-all, because it's not. What we have here in Arizona is not what New York City has or APG has. We are in our own operational environment, and they recognize that, and I think we're getting close. But it'll be interesting with the community opening up. We can use that as a guideline. We can look at it. We can see what happens now that Yuma, the stay-at-home order is gone, and then what we do. Initially, like we've said several times, we wanted to open, and Hire came back and said, you will remain at Charlie. So until we're told or the senior commander has the ability to reduce it, we will remain at Charlie. But I think it's going to be pretty quick. I don't see us being in this too much longer. And then that's what that plan is, that 30 pages of step-by-step what a bowling alley needs to do. It's very, very detailed on what everything on post has to be as you reduce down. And it tells you what can be open and what can't. And we're stuck at Charlie right now. But hopefully next week by this time, maybe I'll have a different message.
Colonel Poppenberger, Memorial Day is upon us. And in addition to honoring the fallen, Memorial Day is traditionally a day when folks go out of town. This year, can YPG soldiers and DOD civilians do that?
So, Mark, let me first just talk about Memorial Day. And what I want to highlight on Memorial Day is here in the next week or so, you're going to see my Memorial Day safety message come out. Memorial Day is one of those days where there's just tons of accidents, safety-related challenges. And what I want to first highlight is, for the workforce, remember, be safe, do the right thing. And when I talk about safety, both, as we talk about boating safety, driving safety, in any of those conditions, let's also keep in mind COVID-19 safety. So let's incorporate that in our overall personal risk assessments and safety planning guides, right? And so just like don't drink and drive, don't boat and drink, and don't do some of those things, remember the practices that we've been doing here for the last several months as it relates to COVID-19 as well. So as I said in my opening statement, the governor's opening up many things, many events, or not events necessarily, but restaurants and whatnot. And I'm sure by this time, a lot of folks have cabin fever and do want to get out. I'll remind you of our policy. Within DOD, we are still restricted to the local travel area. Now, at YPG, we never put more constraints on than our previous policy, which is 250-mile limitation. So what that means is, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Diego are still within that 250-mile range. What I would say is do things with caution. As I just said, safety. Think COVID safety precautions as well. What we've done, with the soldiers is if anybody was going to take a pass and try going to those locations, well, we'd have a discussion about it. There has been some instances where folks have gone to the Phoenix or San Diego area for various medical appointments and whatnot, and that's okay. What I will say is across the board in these locations, there's not a lot of stuff going on anyways. So what I would encourage you to do as you're looking at your Memorial Weekend plans is, do things that you're in groups of smaller than 10, or if you're part of a larger one, stay away and keep your bubble in 10 or less, and stay away from the larger areas, and mask up as appropriate. And continue to do the same safety precautions we've been doing for the last several months, because we've proven that these things are working for us, and let's just continue to keep those practices on. That being said, I understand, hey, the golf courses are open, the river's nice this time of year, but you can still do those things and remain socially distanced. Wash your hands. Do the same practices that we've been doing all along. Together, we're going to continue to get through this pandemic and come out stronger in the end. So yeah, it's okay to go do some of these things that are open. The restriction is 250 miles. You can't go outside of that range right now, and that's from DOD policy that's out there. But there's a lot of things that we can do within those constraints. So enjoy yourselves. Do so safely. Don't drink and drive. Remember your COVID safety precautions. And that's what I'd say about Memorial Day planning. So in closing, what I'd like to say is again, YPG remains strong. We do all kinds of phenomenal work out here. We're going to be doing more work coming forward. And so continue to implement those practices that have been working so well for us going forward. As I said earlier, Memorial Day, think safety first, and apply that to everything that you do day in and day out. We need you all back here. We're a strong organization with a lot more to do yet to come. Thanks.